Okay.
Yeah, and
Stephanie would agree with us because she was there.
that's right. All right, everyone. So welcome, everyone. Apparently, we are competing with a World Cup semifinal game. So who knows? If you actually want to come here. The good news is this is being taped, and so we can. Well, when Dave is like this, maybe.
Speak loud, everybody.
I know that it's being recorded, so people might not feel compelled to come, even though we do have treats, we do have cookies and chips and coffee and water. So welcome to the December President's Forum. Great to have, it's interesting, sometimes we start with a few more people, but we just appreciate that you decided to choose to spend your 12 to 1 with us today. And so I'm going to say a few words, and I have some colleagues who are going to come up and say a few words, and then I'll come back up. As always, we encourage questions. So the big topic today is, yes on PCC! Woo-hoo! Okay, so we just passed a $565 million bond. That's a big chunk of change. What's really amazing is that we passed it with 70.59% passage saying yes. People, I gotta tell you, that is almost unheard of in terms of community college bonds. When I was at the Community College League of California conference back in November, Cerritos College and Santa Monica College both had bonds on the ballot, and I think both of theirs passed with 56. Just 1%, maybe they went up in the final counting, I don't know, but that's what most bonds pass for. It's in the 50s, not 70.59%, so I'm kind of going to tattoo that right here. It's really great, and you know what it does? It is a testament to how much support there is for PCC in the local community. And it's a testament to the foundation who spearheaded the campaign. There was a foundation campaign committee chaired by former president, former state senator, former chancellor. Hey, we got it! And now it's like, now what? So Candace is going to talk a little bit about how it's all structured. And there is a board study session tomorrow where one piece of this will be talked about, and Candace will talk a little bit about that. And then our fabulous Chief Facilities Executive over here, Richard Larrick, is going to come up and talk about the programs themselves and a little bit of information about construction and how that all works. And then I'm going to come back and talk about shared governance, because getting the bond is awesome, but it is really a shared governance experience. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that might look like. And because if you're in a building that's going to be built, you will have an opportunity. If you want to be a representative at the college, you can do that. So there's room for a lot of stuff happening with that. With that, Candace, come on up.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So the district, again, yay, go measure PCC, since that was really, really successful. One of the requirements that the district has to adhere to per this educational code, sections 15, 278, 280, and 282, is that we actually have to set up what's called a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And the way in which we think about membership, some of this is actually, there are 5 roles within that CBOC that are required by Ed Code. And then the district also has some ability to make some adjustments or some additions to what they believe would be help to give some guidance. And so currently, the administrative procedure actually has those 5 members. So an example of one of the members, you see them here. So one member has to be active in a business organization that does business within the district. One member has to be active in a senior citizens organization. Another has to be active in a bona fide taxpayer organization. I recently got a question about that. So an example of a bona fide taxpayer organization is like a homeowners association, so think about a homeowners association. All of the members, dues paying member of that organization, they pay taxes in the city of Pasadena or any of our areas, so that would be an example of us soliciting membership from one of those orgs. A member of our student body, one active member in the support and organization of the district, but cannot be a district employee. And then we have at-large members, and so current at-large members is each of the trustees will be able to nominate or designate a person within their area to serve on that committee as well. So that's how the committee is structured. The committee's role, so this will be the great study session tomorrow. This is a brief. So the goal or the purpose of that committee is to inform the public concerning the expenditure of the bond revenues. So this committee is really important in sort of our accountability mechanism to say, what we say we were going to spend the bond funds on is actually what the district is spending them on. So it's an independent group, right? They operate while they use district facilities, and district staff will provide information to the CBOC. They function independently in that they're just reviewing the expenditures against this bond's funds. So they actively review and they report to make sure that we are properly accounting for and expending taxpayers' dollars. They advise the college, they're making sure that we're complying with all of the California Constitution sections for allowable expenses. So an example of not an allowable expenses, we can't start saying, well, now, awesome sauce, I got $540 million, that's probably what will clear from the bond sales, but I've got $500 million to now say, I don't want to pay for this for the college, let's put it on the bond. No, there are some structures in place in that we had to express a project list in our ballot measure that was sent to the state and certified, and so we can only spend against those pieces. And then they just make sure they meet on a quarterly basis, they produce minutes, they have to produce an annual report based on those expenditures and sort of, again, say that the college is adhering to what we said we were going to spend those funds on. So we like that. And the last piece is quickly the timeline. Like, when are we gonna get the money? When are we gonna get the money? Candace, is the money here? Not yet. So first thing that needs to happen is the district needs to certify the election results. And what that means is just writing those into a Board of Trustees minutes. So we are certifying the election results in January, and it's intentional because we want to make sure that we were able to have this study session with our Board of Trustee members so that they see about the CBOC, understand the role of the CBC, because they're going to play an important role in advocating or suggesting or nominating people to serve on that. Well, we have 60 days from the date that we certify the election results to have that CBOC in place. 60 days. So we chose the January meeting because the holidays are coming up and it's kind of challenging to get anyone or to think about things in that December period. So January Board of Trustees meeting, we will certify. We have 60 days from that point. In March, we will then, the Board of Trustees will have selected who the CBOC members are. So they'll point that in March 2023. What we'll start to do is we will enter what's called the municipal bond market. So it's super exciting. Aren't you excited? Super exciting. So what happens is it's about a 3-month process. It's not something that we still get $565 million like really quickly. The first thing that's going to happen in this 3-month period is the district has to start anticipating what our cash flow needs are going to be in the initial sort of project base. We don't sell all $565 million in bonds out of the gate. We have to structure it in Series A, Series Bs, bonds that we're going to sell over time because there are requirements in terms of when we need to be completed with those projects. Like, we just can't have the money indefinitely. And so we have to be strategic about thinking in 2023 going into 2024, what projects, what work is going to happen so that we can make sure that we have the cash to play those projects, and those are the bond dollars that we'll sell initially. Usually, so looking at like Mount SAC, Santa Monica, numbers could be anywhere from PUSD actually just sold bonds. They sold just $50 million in their bonds initially to help with some of the architectural work. So again, the district has some work to do to figure out what that first projection is. My guess, it could be anywhere from 80 to 150 million out of the gate, but I think we're gonna wanna just validate what we think our cash flow needs are going to be, what buildings we may think about in those first 5 years in order to make that projection. So stay tuned on that process. But we'll start that work in April. We're gonna need to sell and receive some bond funding by June of 2023, some initial portion, because some of the strategy around our bond sales were that we were gonna pay off the loan that we have on the Serafian portion of the building that the district had to pay for. It's about $27 million. So we're gonna pay off that loan with the district GO bond proceeds initially. So already, I know I need to go out to the bond market with $27 million. So we know that. What we need to do then is just adjust and figure out what portion of additional projects we think would be solid for our first bond sale. Make sense? Awesome. I think Richard, my friend, I think he might be next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to probably give you more information about construction that you really need to know. This is kind of the boring project part of it. The exciting part is we do have some shovel-ready projects. We did have some projects that we were working on the books that we could not support with our reserves or the state funding that we had, and so we're ready to tee up as soon as Candace tells me I have money in my bank account to spend. We're ready to tee up the Octagon Gym project, which was an outdoor gym for instruction purposes. Lot 4, we have a renovation in Lot 4. It needs a lighting retrofit, and there's some minor cosmetic items that need to be taken care of in Lot 4, and so we'll take care of that in the bond. In design, I know we've tapped the community for some input, and I think tomorrow night we'll be finalizing the mirror pool renovation and reconstruction design that we're going to be moving forward. So that's in design, and that will kick off, and that will be funded by the bond project. In addition to the Galloway Plaza Cafe, that was another project that was identified in our facilities master plan, that we were going to revitalize the center of the Galloway Plaza and bring a cafe on that side so it's close, so we have food services on the east side of campus. And then we're also working on an exterior keyless entry project that we're all trying to get put together. And those are some of the shovel-ready projects that we have ready to go. Then comes the real fun stuff. So based off the FMP, we had an initial projects list that we floated when we went out with bond. In that was definitely infrastructure, rehabilitation and replacements on our MEP, which is our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. As we remind everyone constantly, we do have some new buildings, but the majority of the infrastructure on this campus is about 75 to 100 years old. So on a day-to-day basis, we're actually digging up in front of the C building right now with some clogged and broken pipes. We constantly are back up against something on a daily basis that needs to be, it's past its service life and needs to be replaced. So that's one of the big key critical projects that was going to come out in this first initial bond. In addition to that, we're looking at critical spaces. So we were envisioning there would be a new student services center building. That would be currently on the footprint that the Student Services and Harbison Hall are at. We were looking at a sister building to Serafian to the east of that. We were calling that a new STEM building. And then we were also in that plan, when we carved out the dollars that we had, we were looking at the new academic building with a pool rehabilitation, and that's kind of where the W footprint is, and the pool would remain where it's at. We believe we can also leverage some state funding in addition to our bond funds, and we were trying to schedule in an e-building modernization project. Because we were just on that side of the campus, and then there's all this fun stuff. It's like moving chess pieces all over the board that I have to do with swing space and how do we coordinate moving people into new buildings, moving out of buildings for modernizing. And so we think in that first go around with the Serafian building coming online in fall of '24 and a potential new STEM building coming online in somewhere around in '27, that we can kind of leverage Science Village for some swing space, we can modernize e-building, and then we can get everybody in their new spaces, and Science Village could go away someday.
Which our neighbors would.
Yes, which our neighbors reminded us, Candace and I just came from a neighborhood committee meeting, and they reminded us again about Science Village.
Yes.
So it's kind of some of the, I'm sorry.
It's very important.
Yes.
I know that's been on the neighbors' minds for a long time.
Yeah, so that's kind of the initial project list that was taken from our FMP. Again, the FMP is a living document. As we come back from COVID and as we work with some of the user groups here on campus, there are projects that can slide up and down within that FMP depending on the needs of the campus. So, a typical project timeline. Yes, I want it tomorrow. Usually our major capital outlay projects take 4 to 5 years from concept to occupancy. Serafian started somewhere in 16, I believe. Prior to my coming to the college, there was design that was started, conversation. It has to go through a process through the state. That we got state matching funds, the design, working with stakeholders, and then finally we get to the point where we have plans approved by the division of the state architect, and we can go out to bid and then go through the construction process. So usually it takes us 6 months to a year to come up with our initial programming, and that's internally. What's going in the building, right? We would work with the academic side, work with the college, and we figure out what's going in a building, and then we go and get an architect. There's a whole process about how we hire architects that I won't bore you with, but let's say we have an architect that we feel who can do this design. That would usually take them, depending on how complex the design is, may take them a year to a year and a half to do a complex design. Then comes our lovely regulatory DSA, Division of State Architect. It could be stuck in DSA for up to a year. That's kind of what we experienced with Serafian. It goes through structural review, it goes through fire life safety review, it goes with Americans with Disability Act review, and they go through these complex plans that are 500 pages or more, and they go through and they vet that, and then they say to the college, you have a DSA application number and you're ready to go construct. Then construction can take anywhere up to 2 years, and this is from the minute they break ground all the way to when we open the doors. And then occupancy, us moving in, the FF&E, moving offices, getting that all up to this speed can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on how we're phasing in people and how we're bringing the building online. So that's a brand new building. So today we started with the concept, and we're talking about the new Student Services building. We're in December of 2022. We would be lucky if we're opening the doors in December of 27 on a new Student Services building. I'm going to get to some ways to cheat this a little bit in the next slide on that timeline to accelerate. So smaller projects, though, usually take about 4 months to 1 year. Now, small projects, it depends on what we're talking about. We're not talking about building a whole brand new building. This could be an office remodel. This could be redoing a wing. This could be the addition of the Octagon gym, a new small asset. Those will usually take 4 months to a year to design. 6 to 8 months in DSA. Some of these projects we can just walk into DSA and get over the counter, or it takes a little less time for them because it's not complex. it's 20 sheets of plans versus 500. And then our award and delivery can be, depending on the project, anywhere from 90 days to 365 days. So that's what a smaller project will look at, completing it within those timelines. So how do we get there? So what we call is design, bid, and build is a traditional model. So we go out and hire a designer, they come up with a set of plans, they're vetted by the state, we take those plans, we put them on the street and bid them, it goes to the lowest bidder, and then we enter into construction. So that is the standard model that was been in the industry. Somewhere in the mid-2000s, we started there was legislation and some different models came into the public sector. One of them is called leaseback. This usually works for smaller districts that don't have the capital outlay, but larger districts have also figured out how to make this work within the legislation. It's where the district leases back the property or the asset area to a contractor who then completes the project, and at the end of the completion, we would lease it back from them, which was actually a purchase. What we get on that is, there's a difference here. We get to go with a best value contract. So we would still go through a bidding process. We can go ahead and change the specifications within that. We can get to a best value versus just a straight hard lowest bidder. Someone bids the lowest and they get the project. We can also go out and complete that project, and in that framework is called a guaranteed maximum price. So we say we're going to bid this much for this, $100 million for a new science building, and that's our guaranteed maximum price. A lot of things happen between here and there where we might change the specs or change some things to make sure we don't exceed that maximum price, but that's what we're at. The most popular one that the community college districts are entering into is called design build. So this gets us a little bit of both of these. What's nice about it is it is a model where we're hiring a single entity. So now we're not going out and finding an architect and then going through the bid process and getting a contractor and then completing it. We end up signing a contract with a team, which is the architect, the engineer, and the contractor as one. So we can enter in with a design concept in mind. The college can come in and say, I need a student services building. This is the following programming that's going in that. We think that it should be multi-level. Here's what we want. And then we put out an RFP process, and we can award to teams. There'll be multiple teams that will come in with architects and contractors that partner together. They would come in, and then we don't have to select the lowest bidder of the team on our concept. We would end up selecting best value, maybe someone has more experience building student services, someone who's successfully done a building model with that architecture team. We have some different parameters that we can then select the best value to the college and not have to go with the lowest bidder. What's nice about this is we get reduced project costs because we're working and creating the specifications along the way. And the big one, here's how we cheated on the front end of a normal delivery, we get an expedited delivery because we have a team working together from the beginning on a design and getting it through DSA versus these multiple steps to get to DSA. And I think that was more than you needed to know about construction. Oh, you want to do that now, or?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
They're right there.
All right, I thought I was going to get out of this and maybe dodge questions till the end. But is there any questions about construction or the project list or anything like that that I can answer? Oh, you guys are so
You
easy.
guys are easy.
Ah, here we go.
Just out of curiosity, did they make a decision on the mirrored pools? You spoke about that. I'm sorry.
So on the mirror pools, yeah, I got you. I don't know. The question was, has a decision been made on the mirror pools? We're working through the shared governance process tomorrow night. I hope that we'll have a solidified direction for facilities. So there is a recommendation from the facilities subcommittee, the board subcommittee, to the board. There'll be some discussion, and it will hopefully give us a direction on which way we were going with the mirror pools, and so I can get that design started. Yes.
When do you think the outdoor octagon could be completed?
Yes, I heard you. The rest of the question was on the completion of the Octagon gym. I'm gonna wait for my boss to tell me what my bank account looks like. And I think we were looking at a 6-month project timeline with that, with the infrastructure, because that also got ADA access, and it got a drinking or hydration station and a couple other things. So we're thinking it was, and some additional synthetic turf around it. So it's not, just wasn't the Octagon gym, it was the peripherals, and we were looking at a 6-month timeline on that, once I get to go ahead to put it on the street. So it's sitting there ready to go. Yes, Alex?
It's not.
Hi. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how this extra work is going to impact facilities in general and staffing, because it sounds like a whole bunch of stuff that you guys have to worry about. Does this mean service calls slow down? Does this mean the rest of construction on campus takes a back seat?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, as you may or may not know, facilities is a 24/7 job. This will be bifurcated into 2 separate areas. So of course we have the existing facilities, the trouble calls, everything that happens to manage the campus on a day-to-day basis is there and in place. It doesn't change. There is a whole new structure that Erica's going to talk about in shared governance and how we get to the other components of this. There will be a construction side, and that construction side is a temporary side because it's associated with the bond. That will be here to do these large capital outlay projects and to work with existing facilities. Because as existing facilities is doing their daily business, they might find out that the air handlers in our building need to be replaced, the air conditioning, and they're gonna call over and say, well, that language infrastructure fits into bond, doesn't need to come out of general fund, comes over here to that group that will then design the project and execute it and deliver it. So facilities is intertwined with the execution of the bond construction, but you're still gonna, it's not gonna be mired down on a day-to-day basis with it. It's still here to service the custodial and the maintenance needs of the college. Yes?
Who decides which one of those plans you use, the previous one, design, build, build?
Who decides?
I think the question was who decides which delivery model, I'll call it a delivery model, a project goes into. That would be the bond group that we're gonna establish internally. My thought would be is on some projects, it basically, I'm a carpenter by trade, so it's tools in my tool belt. I believe that I would like to deliver with expediency a new student service center and the new building on the east side of campus, just so we can get off the east side of campus. So those would lend me to recommend that we go with design build on those processes. Whereas the academic building has a little bit longer lead time, so we may go a traditional model with the academic building so we can make a thoughtful decision on the programming and how it's designed.
But this is something that would go through the board
Yeah,
facilities.
that's what it started with, was, yeah, it would just be my recommendation to the committee. Come on, I'm warmed up. That's it? Alex, you said, it seemed like you started to rustle a little bit. You have another question? Okay, very good, thank you.
Great, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Candace. Yeah, definitely the Board Facilities Committee will probably start meeting monthly, I would think, soon, so we can start talking about these things. And we do have folks on that committee who have done construction. So we've got some really well-versed trustees, so that's good too. So that's all of the mechanics, you know, how do we get the money? How do we, once we have it, how do we, you know, turn money into a building? But along the way, there's shared governance. And as many of you know, I came here from being president of LA Valley College. And there I oversaw a bond program that had about $624 million in it. And we built lots of buildings and did projects. And one of the best standing committees I worked with on that campus was called the Bond Work Group. And that was basically a group of individuals, a representative, a representative from the Senate, they don't have a classified Senate, but an academic Senate. Here it would be a classified Senate. There would be representatives from each of the bargaining groups that we have, and administrators, of course. And the idea behind the Bond Work Group is once a month, twice a month, depending on how many projects are going, that group meets, and Richard and whoever we might be using for the program manager, that might be a company, it might be a consultant, it might be whatever, comes and gives an update on what's happening with all of the building projects across the campus. And that's the opportunity for all the shared governance representatives to ask questions, to make sure, and yes, that does include students, very important to have students on that. And really, the idea is we've got a lot of different groups here on campus, and they've got a lot of different perspectives, and we want to make sure all those perspectives are brought to bear on it. Oftentimes, that's where we will hear campus interest in environmental or climate concerns, and do we want to have LEED designations for all of our buildings, and that's really about how you design buildings to be energy efficient, and you can earn different kinds of status points. It can also be something about, well, how many trees do we have now, and how many trees do you think we're going to have at the end of the building process? And that's really important. I can tell you at Valley College, which was a Tree Campus USA, we started the bond program with the bond building program with about 1,700 trees. And the plan was that by the time all the buildings were built, there would be 1,850 trees. And so there was an interest in a net gain of trees and what types of trees. And so you wind up talking about those things too, because when you do construction, sometimes trees make it, and sometimes they don't, depending on how long the construction is and where it's going. So it's really, there's a lot of things to think about. There's also one of my fun topics of that group. There was a representative on the group who was an astronomy faculty member, and we had a planetarium, just like we do here at Valley College. And we spent many hours on light pollution, because one of his concerns was, as we were building buildings, as we were changing to LED lights, and where we were putting the lights and how we were putting them, it was impacting his ability to use the telescopes at night. So you wouldn't think, oh, we got to worry about telescopes. Well, we do, because we have a planetarium. So we have to think about those kinds of things, and the only way you think about those things is if you have people sitting around the table who work in various parts of the college and understand what might happen if we were to change this changes over here. So that's the role of the bond work group. But then we have individual groups that meet to deal with each type of project. So you see we have the building user group. So for example, there's a version of a building user group for Serafian, because we have people who are going back into Serafian, and I think there have been some conversations around what it should look like. But as we think about the student services building, one of the things we'll try to figure out about the student services building is who all is going into it. And those folks who are going into it, how much space do you need? What do you think the space should look like? Do you need 2 offices or do you need 3 offices? And so the members of the BUG, the building user group, are individuals who are going to live in that building, who are going to figure out how do we make our workday make sense. And one of the best examples that I have is at Valley College. Arnina and I spent 2.5 years in a double-wide trailer while an administration building was being built. And Jack knows, because I was QOTDW, Queen of the Double Wide. And so we had building user group meetings, and there are basic questions. So the way it worked out, there was a president's, a suite, and then over here was where the foundation was, where institutional research was, and in between, there was a workroom slash break room. The original designs had a sink in there because there was also a microwave and a refrigerator and a toaster oven. But by the time the building was being built, there was no sink. And the builders hadn't bothered to mention to anybody that there wasn't going to be a sink in there. Now, we all know in order to make coffee, what do you need? After you microwave something in the microwave and you want to clean off that, ecologically sound dish that you used instead of paper, what do you need? Water. I mean, and the list goes on, right? So part of the building user group is really an effort to make sure that we don't build buildings that are just not functional. It's really important. But not every project, as Richard was saying, not every project is going to be a building. In some cases, it might be renovation, like we might, renovating the E-building, right? So that's a building that exists. Obviously, you can't completely change it, but you can make renovations to it that will make it better, more useful, what have you. So we would need a RUG, a renovation user group, right? Need to figure out what goes in there. And then the last is the PUG, and we have a great example of the Octagon, because the Octagon is not a building, it's not a renovation, it's a project, right? It didn't exist before, so that's a PUG. So the whole goal is not to drive you crazy with these little letters, and you gotta have some fun, right? But really, it's a way to say, this is how we incorporate the feedback of the people who will live in these buildings. These are the ways that we incorporate and get ideas, because there may be some things that we don't even know about you are doing. A building that worked a certain way 20 or 30 years ago isn't gonna work that way. I mean, we know our students are constantly in search of plugs, right? Now, we also know, do we necessarily just need 3-prong plugs? What might we want to have a whole strip of? A USB port, right? Because a lot of students, they don't have their block with them, right? They don't have their charging block. So we have to think about, what's the best way to have those plugs? It's all those kinds of things, and who best knows? Because you walk around and you see the students, and you're in all these buildings, so you know how the building functions. And then lastly, I think the importance of that is always involving students, because one of the things we know is that their space needs are different than they were 30 years ago, right? It's not, the old study carrels in the library. It's not any of that. It might be big open tables, or it might be, here's a big open area, but we need some study rooms over here, depending on what the building is. I will tell you that one of the things that will definitely be staying in the C building, if you spend any time in there, are the telephone booths. I am telling you, those telephone booths, they are busy all day, every day. The number of students who go in there, they sleep, they might have a meal, sometimes they stream something, they're watching TV, they're doing homework. It's really great to walk by and see them, and clearly they're enjoying the space. So those are the kinds of things that we have to think about. So that's kind of what we're doing, soup to nuts. Are there any questions about the shared governance piece? Yes?
How do you join one of those groups?
So the BWG, that's one of the things we'll have to go through the shared governance process. We'll have to meet with our governing groups and decide, because they will be they'll be appointing members, so the Senate will appoint a member, the representative groups will appoint a member, that kind of thing. In terms of the bug, the rug, and the pug, if you're going into one of those buildings, then there'll be an open invitation, like, hey, we're getting the bug started for the new student services building, who wants to be a part of it? And in that case, what we would definitely want to do, and the precursor to it, Richard, if I, correct me if I'm wrong, is we have to figure out what's going in there, because we've got a lot of student services spread out over the college campus. So now is our golden opportunity to say, hey, if, pie in the sky, what would be an ideal student services building? What's a one-stop center? What's all of these things? And then once we determine that, then we make sure that there is a representative from each of those areas. And so start baking cookies for people if you want that appointment in your area. Other questions? I might put this on. Yes, dear.
Wait, yeah.
Will there be multiple projects going on at the same time? So, and this might be a Richard question, but I just thought of it. So he did his timeline
Yes.
of different types of projects happening. So if there's like a STEM building
Mm-hmm.
and a W building, are there possibilities that projects will be built at same times? Or
Yes.
are we building one and then waiting?
No, we will be doing, that's one of the aspects of coming up with a project list. And then once we figured out what the priorities are, then we take a step back and try to figure out what the right order is, because you've got to have swing space. And I can tell you that it becomes a real problem when you build buildings out of order. That's what happened at Valley. We wound up having to have all of our football games played at other campuses for a year because we took down something before we had the football locker room ready to go. And so it's those kinds of things. So they can be happening simultaneously, but we have to think about, okay, if we're gonna do, X to the W building, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, where do we put everybody? And that becomes part of the calculation.
Perfect, thank you.
It's like a puzzle. Just constantly putting pieces of the puzzle in place. Other questions? This has to be Dion's happiest day because she's getting her octagon. And,
And a pool.
and a pool.
My happy day too, because now I get the octagon gym out of my.
That's right. See now, so it's a win-win day. It is a win-win day. Exactly. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Alrighty. Well, that's the answer to the $64,000 question of we got a bond, now what? There you have it. All right. Thank you for coming, everyone. I don't know the score of the game. Does somebody know the score of the game? 3-0. 3-0. Argentina.